So let's talk about this. Let's get to the big story of the day, which is what's happening in Ukraine right now. Massive attacks overnight with thousands of, according to reports, thousands of Ukrainians being killed in new attacks by the Russian government. And Putin this morning is waking up surrounded by people that he is not sure that he can trust. So really the big story this morning is Vladimir Putin arresting his spy chiefs in his own cabinet, putting them under house arrest because he doesn't know who to turn to and whether or not he's about to face a coup. Is Vladimir Putin about to have a coup within his own cabinet over questions about, hey, we didn't know that NATO had all of these weapons in Ukraine. Like, here we are marching on Ukraine. We are the Russian army going into Ukraine, and we didn't know that there were all of these NATO missile barracks, missile batteries, and aircraft, and all kinds of weapons, and our tanks are being destroyed, and our own troops, our own Russian troops, are being slaughtered at the hands of these NATO forces. They didn't know about this, so Vladimir Putin now arresting those around him for faulty information. Are they leading him down a path that is meant to have him be, crushed in the end?
I don't know. That seems sort of antithetical. Or is it because the powers that be inside Russia are thinking of turning on him because of the true impact of Western sanctions?
I don't know, but we saw in the few days as all of this was unfolding, we saw Putin basically mocking his spy chief in front of his cabinet, basically saying, he dressed him down in front of his other members of his cabinet. And I think we should all be concerned what's about to happen here. If he's arresting members of his cabinet, there is this concern internally that there is this coup attempt where they could have, Putin is overthrown somehow. For what? We don't know. We don't exactly know who would be replacing him, right? This is the question.
A U.S.-backed person.
Perhaps, but then that is assuming that this war, which I think is also it's fallacy to sort of glob onto the idea that only Vladimir Putin is the aggressor, right? It's not just Putin who wants Ukraine not westernized, right? There are other forces inside Russia who want this as well. There are Russians and people in power in Russia who want this as well. There are people in Ukraine who want this as well. So we don't know if it's a starfish or the spider, which, that business analogy, like a starfish, you can cut off all the limbs and it keeps growing. A spider, you have to cut off the head in order to stop it. Like, I think we're mistaken if we think that this is just a spider type aggression and that there are not otherwise forces inside the East that want this.
Meanwhile, this morning, we should also talk about what's happening with Russia seeking aid from China. So we warned you about this. We talked about this here a few weeks ago. Did not we say right here on this program that the real story is China? That if China watches Russia invade Ukraine with the West basically doing not much of anything, what would stop China from invading Taiwan, doing much the same thing? And there the stakes are much higher because there's no way the United States is going to intervene in China with all of the money that the American Wall Street companies make from being involved in China. There's no way they're going to step in. We saw what happened when they raised red flags about what the NBA, some members of the NBA had to say, speaking out against the religious genocide by religious Uyghurs in China. And then the NBA was quick to say, no, we didn't mean it. We're sorry, China. Well, now this morning, learning that Russia is seeking military equipment, calling upon China and aid from China. So they want military equipment and they want aid from China to come help in this battle for Ukraine right now.
Well, and that means Mearsheimer called it 6 years ago. He's like, if we don't stop messing with Russia, we're going to put them right into the arms of China.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Philip was going to say something, I think.
Yeah, just real quick. I was just gonna when he was talking about the investment. I mean, what I think American investors have already lost something like $60 billion just in the sanctions against Russia. I can imagine how much greater that would be if it was China, like the
Right.
Right.
so yeah, I was just gonna make a go along with that point, but we
No,
moved on.
we're going to talk about that when we talk about the budget that just passed and is headed to the president's desk. Because when you look at the United States fiscal balance sheet, no, we can't. There's no way we could afford a war with Russia or China.
Well,
What
and
is
the two
this?
of them teamed up together. That's,
Right.
definitely.
Right.
Yes.
So if we look at this, I mean, Russia has turned to China for military equipment and aid in the weeks since it began its invasion of Ukraine, according to the Washington Post this morning. The officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity, okay, so, take this perhaps with a grain of salt. It's the Washington Post. The development, though, comes as White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan this weekend plans to travel to Rome on Monday to meet with his Chinese counterpart and talking directly with Beijing. Like, you better not send any money to Russia in support of their incursion into Ukraine.
Well, China is saying this has not happened. So how much then are we wondering, is this the West drumming up fear of a China-Russia alliance, or is this real? Like, I can't... But these are the times now,
Is it a
right?
false flag,
Whenever the
right?
United States says what we should be afraid of, do we do that, or do we question who said it? Because it was an anonymous source, and China has continued to portray itself as a neutral actor, right? They're like, we're watching. We don't like this sanction business, but hey, Russia, if you'd like to bring your payment systems over here, we've got some infrastructure and banks. So
and that's what they've
all
been
good.
doing. So yeah, you can't use American banking. Come over here to China. This alliance is more secure now than ever, right? China-Russia relationship. And then, oh, by the way, this morning, North Korea deciding to test intercontinental ballistic missiles over the weekend and into this morning. So now you've got the triumvirate, right? You've got Russia, China, and North Korea. And this is a perfect enemy scenario for the Americans and NATO, right? This is what the war machine has wanted for a long time, and now they get it. They get their World War III. And by the way, these aircraft that are coming through Poland from NATO, that will continue. And these aircraft and support coming through from Poland, from NATO, even though NATO's not supposed to be in Ukraine, is happening. So again, guys, like this NATO involvement, which we've been hearing is like it's supposed to be hands off and they're not involved in this, is happening.
Absolutely.
It is happening right before our eyes. And by the way, this morning, Kremlin has said this exactly, what they want from Ukraine. They've announced demands for ending the war in Ukraine. This is what they're asking for. Ukraine must change its constitution to guarantee it won't join any blocs, i.e. NATO and EU. They must recognize Crimea as part of Russia. They must recognize the eastern separatist regions as independent.
Meanwhile, President Zelensky shows no sign of wanting to do anything like that. In fact, just today is Monday, he asked that his country's application into the European Union be fast-tracked. Now, keep in mind that Ukraine has been asking to join the European Union for years, and the European Union has said no on the basis of corruption, right? Corruption in banks, corruption in politics. So why then, because they are now this the darling of the world, that should they get a fast track into the European Union when other countries like Turkey are still waiting for their application, right? It's and the European Union says no.
Didn't Turkey apply in like 1958 or something like that? Like it was like almost the 1960s when they first tried to join the European bloc like that, and then it was what 2005 I think it was that they like officially like accepted their application and still not there. So
Still not there.
Well, and
Yeah.
also,
So we want you to
And there are
fast
really
track.
silly things on there, like, yes, corruption and, things that the European Union wants. But then there are also like silly things like stop eating the lining of sheep's stomach. If you take that, you don't do these types of farming practices, then you can join. What is the dish in Turkey where they eat the...
Oh, I don't know, but I
it's
know
like,
in haggis, like it's
turkey pie.
I was just gonna mention haggis. Like, why is that okay?
That's Scotland. Yeah, Scotland.
I
Scotland
don't
can do
know.
that.
Well, Scotland's no longer in the European Union, but
Right.
there are certain dishes that the European Union objects to, like that are in the ecosystem. So it's like, Turkey's doing their best to like dot their I's and cross their T's, and Ukraine's like, well, we had a war. Can we get in early? Even though you've been denying us for years.
Another thing too that a lot of people don't think about is like the way that this was all played out, if we would have just minded our own business and let Putin do what he feels he had to do over there, because there's some justification to what he's doing, that the people of Russia would have potentially been like, hey, this isn't right, and maybe voted him out of power next election or whatever. But because we put sanctions on him, because we're hurting the Russian people, that's just going to make them mad at us and start siding with Putin and being like, hey, this isn't cool. And so now you have a united Russia against everything, where you could have had, something completely different.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, a lot of what ifs, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, the way that things are on the ground right now, Putin's forces have been attacking near the NATO border near Poland, 12 miles away, as of the latest reports just a few minutes ago, 12 miles away from Poland, on the doorstep of NATO. When that particular one killed 35 people, which we're getting word of, the base targeting there, it was hit by 30 missiles. So, guys, think about this. We need to all take a deep breath and hope and pray that this doesn't lead to nuclear war, because we also have confirmation now, at least from the United States government, that about 12 miles off the coast of the Pacific, off of the coast of the United States, Russia's submarines, nuclear-powered submarines, have been spotted. So Russia's nuclear subs, which in 1 minute could launch a missile that could wipe out San Francisco, could wipe out Los Angeles, and vaporize those cities in minutes, and they're literally right there, just a few miles off the coast of the United States right now. So forget what's happening in Ukraine. Think about the broader implications of what's happening right now. And we saw those war reports where they've been gaming this out. I watched a TED Talk also by a gentleman who has been studying nuclear war, the threat of nuclear war, for 35 years. But they've been gaming this out. Like, what happens if? And you hear the Senator Richard Shelby from the United States Senate, you hear some of these Republicans, you hear Lindsey Graham calling for the assassination of Vladimir Putin, you hear Senator Richard Shelby and others saying, you know what, fine, let them start a nuclear war. We've got more of them. That's been the rhetoric from your Congress. Fine, let them start a nuclear war. We have more nuclear weapons.
We're ready. We want it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We want that. Are you crazy? If this is gamed out, and according to the reports that I've been reading, this would lead to over 1 billion people killed if this games out. So this is how your Congress is talking right now. This is how crackpot Lindsey Graham calling for the assassination of a world leader, Senator Richard Shelby and others saying, hey, they've got missiles, we've got more of them. They've got 6,000 nuclear warheads, we have more of them. So let's just launch a few of them, see how we do.
Yeah,
I don't vote for that.
Wrapped back around to mutually assured destruction. I mean, that's...
Yeah, and where are you going to hide, by
rhetoric.
the way? I mean, where are you going to hide? Are you going to hide in Iowa in a bunker? No wonder, by the way, the sale of bunkers has been going off the charts in the past few weeks. Rich people have been buying up as many bunkers as they can get their hands on right now to secure themselves. I mean, this is not just some sort of science fiction discussion right now, Terminator 2 level discussion. This is real. You have nuclear weapons off the coast of the United States, and if NATO sticks its neck even further into this mess, we could see missiles launched in the United States, and it's absolutely terrifying.
Now, look, recall that the United States has something called the Monroe Doctrine, right? Which says that no militarized forces will be in the Western Hemisphere in and around the United States' actual landmass, right? So if Russia were to actually put bases in Mexico, in the Caribbean, in Canada, we would consider that to be a violation. That's exactly what Russia is considering a violation right now. And they had been warning about this very thing, right? And so now you see Western forces kind of pushing back at the same time as doing tough talk, as if this came out of nowhere. It didn't.
Right. Yeah, we've known about this for years. They've been telling us for years, hey, please, no NATO on our doorstep. By the way, the whole ceasefire agreement that we have was so that NATO would not expand Eastern. And it did. What did they do? Day one, moved right into Eastern Germany. So okay, we violated it from day one. And again, I come back to what, if they want a ceasefire right now, if Zelensky wants a ceasefire right now, if Putin wants a ceasefire, this is what Russia is asking for. Again, they want Ukraine must change its constitution, that it will not join NATO or the EU, must recognize Crimea as part of Russia, and recognize the Eastern separatist regions as independent. And again,
I don't think that's unreasonable.
And their constitution calls for joining NATO and the EU. Like, that's what they want. That's what they've set out in their constitution, even though Russia has said that's a non-starter.
Right. And they also have sort of these separatist regions where people who live there speak Russian and are pro-Russian, right? But Ukraine wants to sort of get rid of that language, move, Ukrainian into those regions, and that's not what those regions want either. So there is no agency right now. It's just a government fight. And it's so frustrating because we've lost in all of this is not who should do what, but who are the people who are suffering. And unfortunately, while politicians fight with their power, people who are trying to raise families and live their lives are suffering.
Yeah.
Well, and real quick, again, to point people to that documentary by Oliver Stone, Ukraine on Fire, that really talks about the nuances that, we're not getting with this complete story. There's a bunch of nuance with what's going on. So I think that that's like a required watch. It's really hard to find. They're blocking it everywhere, but I actually found it on Apple TV last night, and it is also on Rumble.
Yeah,
I would, and in fact, Oliver Stone was just on Coast to Coast with George Norrie just the other night. If you have a chance to listen to Coast, Oliver Stone was on talking about that and more. So check that out as well.
Oh, you love that guy.
I do.
Clayton listens to him all the time.
If you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, we have a membership program. For the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support independent journalism just by going to morninginvest.com/join.
You get access to exclusive videos, plus the ability to join and chat with us live. We really appreciate your subscription, and you are supporting independent journalism.